Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our Adobe VIP for Enterprise webinar today. So we're joined here by Neil Stevens and Andy Bell, who will be going through the webinar with you. Okay, so I'm now going to pass you over to Andy from Adobe.
There we go. Good morning everyone. Thanks again for joining. So just to explain who I am the commercial lead for VIP for Enterprise for the UK and Ireland. So just wanted to set the scene a little bit in terms of the history before I leave you in the capable hands of Neil to run through. Historically, as I'm sure most of you are aware, Adobe have basically offered two product sets under two licensing methodologies. So the Enterprise product set was available under the Enterprise Term License Agreement, the big 3-year committed contractual agreement, and the Creative Cloud for Team or Document Cloud available under the VIP framework. So as of October of last year, we announced the release of the Enterprise product set under the VIP licensing framework that you are all aware of. Obviously, with that brings to the table all of the enterprise functionality and management and methodology that you would expect from the enterprise product set, but under the VIP framework. So I just wanted to kind of set that scene, and obviously now pass over to Neil's in his, as I say, to run through what that means.
Thanks, Andy. Everyone hear me okay?
Neil's we're muted.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah, okay. I've got the stage. Hi, everyone. I'm Neil Stevens, Senior Solutions Consultant at Adobe for Creative Cloud deployment. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this VIP for Enterprise offering today, which, as Andy says, is essentially a lot of the flexibility of the ETLA console and admin console for Creative Cloud for Enterprise, but within the purchasing framework of VIP. So I've got a little summary here, which kind of, if you're familiar with the VIP for Teams admin console, it'll show you some of the new functionality that you're going to get as part of this. So first and foremost, much more advanced user management and user directory sync. What that means is, rather than having to sort of arbitrarily use your Teams slots to invite users who you think need an Adobe entitlement into the console, you can essentially set up an active synchronization with your entire user directory for the whole organization. So you can make sure that every user in your company, from the security staff to the senior management, are all included in the console, but then you can push them in and out of the Adobe utilization slots as and when you see fit, which is obviously a lot more versatile and flexible than the way you were doing things with VIP for Teams. You've also got selective service configuration. So historically, basically the services that we provide with Creative Cloud were always on for all people. So you can now decide what's more appropriate. If you don't want people sharing out portfolios on Behance and you don't necessarily want them to have access to team projects for video collaboration, you get granular access. We'll get to this a little more when I show you the console in a little while, but you get granular access to who actually has access to what within the organization. It's still anniversary based, and you still add licenses via purchase order as you did before, and all of that is actually shown on the front page of the dashboard from a transactional perspective. Moving forward, you have access to multiple identity types now. We have what we call standard Adobe IDs that we've been used to. We also have enterprise IDs and then federated IDs, which is kind of the pinnacle of security. Essentially, what that means is that you have full ownership of the user data, so you can actually prevent users from accessing that outside of the organization when they leave. You can cut them off, and you can also have control over an encryption key for that data, should you so wish. So you can actually, there's sort of a kill switch for actually killing any data inside the cloud for a particular domain. Single sign-on is part of this federated ID capability. Just forgive me 1 second, sorry. Sorry, where were we? Yeah, you have single sign-on capability within federated ID, and what that means is that you can use an external third-party single sign-on provider. So this is actually sort of the most secure mechanism of having your users access the Creative Cloud, because your user directory retains all of their identity and login credentials, and you just use that third-party provider, potentially with two-factor authentication if you want to, but you use them to allow access to the Creative Cloud. There's a centralized management of all of these aspects and facets inside that one dashboard, as we'll see in a minute, and also access to support through there. There are some subtle differences between the Creative Cloud Enterprise Dashboard and the VIP for Enterprise Dashboard, and we can talk about those at the end. That purely relates, as Andy says, to the slight difference in the transactional aspects of how you buy the software, but essentially all of the functionality is there. So if we just nip over to the admin console here, this is a fictitious admin console that I use for demo purposes. So let me just minimize this. I can show you an overview of how this works. So first and foremost, you will get visibility of your entire estate on the front page of the console. So you can see exactly what you bought, and equally it will show you what you've deployed as well. So at any point you can reconcile number of available licenses and number of active users across all apps plans as well as individual products as well. Equally, if you've bought into stock or document cloud, all of that visibility is there as well. And here's where you can begin to see how many support delegates you've got set up. So historically, the overhead of maintaining all of this was kind of at the doorstep of one person, but now what we allow you to do is have several delegate sub-admin types that can take on different roles for deployment and license management. So if you go into products, you see what the product categories are. So again, straight away, you'll be able to see at a granular level who, for example, has the all apps plan with storage, how many have been used, and then, for example, how many people have been granted access to certain single apps. So complete visibility and predictability of your spend in terms of having a knowledge of what's actually utilized in the business. Now, the user management console here is where it gets more interesting, because as I mentioned, this is where it's a bit more sophisticated, because we can have inactive users inside this management console. So as mentioned, we've got 342 users here, but as you probably noticed on the previous page, we only have 100 product entitlement. But so that may be sufficient. It just depends on the roles of these individual people as to whether you grant them access to the Adobe tools and services or not. And you can quickly see at a glance with the legend over here, have they been granted? So this little Creative Cloud app means this person has all apps, and then this person here has no apps assigned to their user. And there are multiple different ways of actually importing a user database set. So there are bulk operations up here. You can import and export your user list by CSV. As I mentioned, though, we also now actually have a Python script. This is probably outside of the scope of this discussion. You can actually run a script on a machine that has access to your Active Directory forest as well as the Creative Cloud Admin Console, and you can have it automatically sync your Active Directory groups between the two places, which again can be a very useful way of cutting down the time taken to manage users. And so you can see the user groups go within there. The groups are typically set up based on a geographical or departmental basis, I suppose. But then you could have logical ways of assigning those user groups to product entitlements, as you saw before in the previous page. So identity claiming, this is where we talk about this business of the 3 different ID types, and the distinction between them is important. If you invite somebody with an Adobe ID into your Creative Cloud for Teams VIP dashboard, they have complete control over what services they can use, where they can log in, where they can access the storage, and which machines they can mount it on. If you if you use an enterprise ID for that person instead, that means that you have control over that side of it from a security perspective. You know, in certain businesses, obviously, you're going to want to make sure that even if you have a ready supply of freelancers who are moving in and out on a regular basis, you need to have a kind of kill switch to be able to remove them and make sure that account doesn't exist once it leaves the business, because it is qualified against the domain of the business. So this is the page also where we claim or access a domain, as you can see. Once you've claimed that domain to be in your legal ownership, you have complete control of anyone with an email ID against that domain. And as mentioned as well, each domain can have a dedicated encryption key. So in case of emergency break glass, you can hit the kill switch and you can erase all of the storage and stored information in the cloud at any point. So you have the master kill switch of that here. The federated ID, again, is like the enterprise ID, but it uses an identity provider like Okta, some SAML2 compliant provider, to actually allow you to host all of the identities and credentials, but have our provider, have the third-party provider grant access to the cloud. And as I say, that can be done with two-factor authentication, like a token on a cell phone or whatever else. So that's quite important from a security perspective. Something else that allows, that can be useful, if you have users that have actually already created their own private identities at a company domain address, if you use federated ID inside the business, that account can exist twice. So that user can then sign into each of those two accounts, and you get a drop-down choice when you sign into our tools, and they can then use their own private ID or the business ID, and then when they leave the business, they can keep hold of their own private ID, and they will be refused access on the business ID based on the fact that they don't have access to the SAML provider. So inside tools, this is where some of the user management API stuff is done. So I mentioned the script that will actually synchronize a user directory with our account directory. Some of those tools in the developer portal is available in here if you want to get into that stuff. This used to be a very manual process where you had to do your own coding, but that script that we now make available is a kind of first foray from us into actually providing you with a set of tools to be able to achieve that without having the coding expertise in-house. So we're kind of improving the automation of this stuff a lot. Deployment is a very useful aspect to this admin console because we have pre-built packages available for you stored inside CC. Just wait while it thinks about this. So if I go to packages here, you can see we've always got pre-built up-to-date packages containing any variety of the Adobe apps. Typically, we try and mimic the original suite, so Production Premium, Design Premium, plus the All Apps suite. So that's always bang up to date and built and ready to download as a DMG for Mac or PKG for Windows. But it's it's a 22 gig footprint to install all of the applications here. So that's why you might want to also have a subsidiary set of applications ready to go. But it saves having to use the Creative Cloud Packager on a local desktop to make those packages when they're already built. That is still available should you wish to use it. The Creative Cloud Packager for Mac and Windows is still there. If you want to create a fairly esoteric blend of apps that's specific to the way your business works, you can still do that. We also still offer the Adobe Server Update tool, which means that you can actually run an update inside your firewall on a web server that serves out application updates to your users. Rather than downloading them multiple times wholesale, you can actually host them within your own business and save on your internet traffic. And then you also have the Remote Update Manager if you want to lock down users' access to updates from a desktop perspective and prevent them from updating without that being sanctioned. In many cases, people want to sandbox test our updates to make sure they work in their environment. You can be in control of pushing out those updates using the Remote Update Manager. Also within here we have the Support Console. So this is where one place to go to look at all your existing support cases and also to create support admin delegates. Do you remember I mentioned earlier on you can have different user types, so you can actually have support admin delegates now who can contact support but don't necessarily focus on the deployment side of this. So you can actually begin to split the roles and responsibilities of managing the Adobe estate inside your business. And as you can see, we have a plethora of ways to contact our support organization within here: 24/7 phone support, online support chat, and visibility of all existing support cases that are searchable inside there. You also have access to expert sessions as well, which is a one-to-one session with one of our product experts. Very underutilized. That was also there in Teams as well, but you get a more transparent way of booking that now. So really, if your users have an interest in a particular workflow or in looking at a product update and looking at new feature sets for a specific application, they can book an expert session. Or equally, from a support angle. You know, why does the application crash regularly when I do this? Those sort of things we can look at with a combination of the support services and the expert sessions. So that you will see is a snapshot of the way things work now inside VIP for Enterprise. I think you'll agree it's a much more flexible, versatile way of actually managing your Adobe estate, and it probably will remove a lot of overhead that you had with the original VIP CCT dashboard. At this point, I think we can open it up to questions. Do I need to unshare my screen? Are we going to do the questions done?
I don't know. I'll pop it back to my screen.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Okey-dokes. So yeah, so if you do have any questions, if you just pop those in the questions box just at the right hand side of your screen, I'll read those out for Niels shortly.
And what I'll do is I'll let you all have my email address there. Oh, let's see, it's gone to organisers and panelists only. You're more than welcome to share.
I'll send that in a follow-up email.
With all the delegates.
Okay.
Any questions at all? All self-explanatory. Hopefully that addresses some of the concerns you had and some of the bugbears you may have had with the way that Adobe software was rolled out before anyway.
Oh, we do have a question.
We're always looking for feedback and feature requests, but I think that probably covers most of people's day-to-day woes in managing the Adobe estate.
So we do have a question. The first one's from Gavin, which says, what is the impact on Citrix installs?
We support Citrix or any other virtualized environments at a basic level, in that, you know, we will say that the application will execute open documents and save documents. Anecdotally, the single sign-on process works well there. It's obviously just, you know, it's limited support from our end. If you come up against any issues, we will typically request that you replicate them in a vanilla standard desktop environment before we can take that further. Anecdotally, as I say, the single sign-on piece works well, and there are not many known issues. From a licensing perspective, you need to have one signed-in user per virtual desktop and make sure that you're compliant from that perspective. Obviously, the licensing model is still on a named user basis here, that the serial number licensing isn't available. So you just got to make sure you sort of stay honest and have the right number of user identities per virtual desktop, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, following on from that, Gavin said, are we able to install it on the whole farm and allow this to manage the access?
You can do, but again, each individual virtual desktop will need to be signed in as a different user. So you can produce and install a package which you can push out to every desktop on the farm, but then obviously each one is going to have to be signed in as a different user, whether that's a real identity or whether that's user 1 at company.com, user 2, user 3 at, that's kind of up to you. That's how you set up your user database in the management console, but it does need to be a separate instance per virtual desktop.
Okay, thanks, Niels. So we have another question here from Cameron. He said, is there a way of seeing when a user last used their subscription?
There is not. You can see whether they've accepted the invitation, and you can see what their utilization of the storage is, but that's about it at this point.
Okay, thanks, Niels.
No problem.
So I think that might be all the questions we have today. Unless there are any popping up. No, it doesn't look like there are. So thanks everyone for joining today, and thank you so much, Niels, for presenting on the webinar. So as mentioned previously, if you do have any questions, there's the Tell Me More email address there, which will come straight through to myself and my team. And then I'll also, in my follow-up email with the link to the recording, I'll send you Niels' email address as well if you do have any questions to send directly to him. So thanks for your time, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks very much.